Who am I really? Not who you pretend to be, not what others expect you to be, but who you are. When no one is watching, when you're not trying to please anyone, when you don't have to fit into any role, any label, any mask. Most of us go through life carrying ideas that aren't even ours. Phrases we heard when we were young that crept in as absolute truths, never to be questioned. You're too shy. You're difficult to deal with. You're lazy. You always mess things up. You have no talent. You're not good enough. And the worst part, we believe it. We believe it because we were taught to trust others' words more than our own perception. They taught us to look at ourselves through other people's eyes, to measure ourselves by someone else's standards, to shape our opinions so we wouldn't bother anyone, to swallow our thoughts so we wouldn't confront anyone, to like what everyone else liked just so we wouldn't be the odd one out. But there comes a moment, sometimes after a fall, a crisis, a loss, or just a deep silence, when something inside us wakes up, a calling, a restlessness, a burning question. Am I really what I believe I am? And that's when everything begins to change, because when that doubt is born, it's a sign that something inside is breaking. And at the same time, something much truer is trying to be born. You know, it's easy to live on autopilot. Wake up, get things done, go to work, smile politely, say, I'm fine, even when you're not. It's convenient to follow the invisible script of expected behavior. It's comfortable not to confront your own thoughts, even when they hurt. But living like that is not living, it's surviving. And you were born for more than just surviving. You were born to be whole, to feel at peace within yourself, to enjoy your own company, to be able to say, this is me, with confidence, even if no one else understands. Have you noticed how sometimes your most authentic tastes don't make sense to anyone else? Maybe you love a song others think is cheesy. Maybe you enjoy quiet places, simple food, walking barefoot, reading poetry, or watching the sky in the late afternoon. Maybe you love silence when others prefer noise. Maybe you enjoy deep conversations while others talk about trivial things. And that's okay. These things say a lot about you. They are your fingerprints on the world. They are small clues to your purest identity, the one that exists regardless of other people's approval. And the same goes for what you dislike. Maybe you hate competitive environments, even if people say it's normal. Maybe you feel uncomfortable with jokes everyone laughs at, but that go against your conscience. Maybe you don't like speaking loudly, putting yourself out there, or taking big risks, and that's okay. You don't have to violate yourself just to be accepted. That's the great trap of modern life. We adjust ourselves so much that one day we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves. We lose our values. We lose what makes our hearts beat faster. But it's never too late to find yourself again. Never too late to look at yourself with kindness and say, I hurt myself trying to please others, but now I want to heal by being myself. Have you noticed how sometimes you agreed with things that made no sense, just to avoid conflict? Maybe you smiled at offensive comments. Maybe you stayed silent when you really wanted to speak. Maybe you accepted invitations, ideas, conversations, judgments, just so you wouldn't seem weird, difficult, or annoying. But every time you silence yourself to keep outer peace, you risk starting an inner war. And slowly, that war turns into silence. A heavy silence, not the absence of noise, but the absence of you. Have you ever felt that way? Being physically present, but absent from yourself. Being in places, but not feeling like you belong. As if your body were there, but your soul was distant, asleep, hidden. Yes, That happens when we live more to meet expectations than to honor our truth. When we repeat opinions without thinking. When we smile without wanting to. When we pretend to be comfortable in places that suffocate us. When we always give in and forget that we also have the right to say no, to not like, to not accept. Have you ever asked yourself why you think the way you do? Where do your beliefs, fears, and reactions come from? Do you really believe those things? Or were they just learned and never questioned again? Did you truly choose this path? Or just followed the flow, unaware that you could have gone another way? These questions, as uncomfortable as they may be, are liberating, because we only truly find ourselves when we begin to let go of what we never really were. And sometimes, what you call just the way I am is actually a result of pain you didn't want to feel anymore. Sometimes, your isolation isn't shyness, it's protection. Your aggressiveness isn't your nature, it's defense. Your coldness isn't indifference, it's the exhaustion of waiting for something that never came. And all of that can be understood, embraced, and transformed if you're willing to look at yourself with honesty. Don't blame yourself for believing distorted ideas about who you are. When we're children, we absorb everything as truth, and often what was said, carelessly or ignorantly, got imprinted in us. Harsh words, unfair comparisons, imposed labels, all of it shaped the image you built of yourself. But now you've grown, and you have the chance to walk a new path, to strip off the lies, to draw closer to who you really are. Think for a moment. What did you love when you were a child? What were your dreams? What made you feel proud? What part of yourself slowly faded over time? These answers are precious. They point to places in your soul that are still alive, just forgotten. And maybe it's time to rekindle them, not to become who you used to be, but to reconnect with what should have never been left behind. You no longer need to hide. You no longer need to pretend you don't feel. You no longer need to dress yourself in what others expect. You can strip yourself of expectations, of guilt, of old phrases, of labels that were never yours. And then you can begin to build yourself with truth, with calm, with care, with freedom. Because being who you truly are takes work, but it brings peace. And peace is priceless. Have you ever noticed how some people shine even without trying? They don't shout. They don't beg for attention. They don't show off. They simply are. And in being who they are, they awaken something in others. A natural respect, a quiet admiration. Do you know why? Because there's immense power in someone who knows and accepts themselves. There's something magnetic about someone who's comfortable in their own skin. Those people also doubted themselves. They also faced criticism. They also tried to fit in. But at some point, they chose to be free. They chose to honor themselves. And when you start honoring yourself, everything changes. You stop accepting emotional scraps. You stop shrinking to fit into others' molds. You stop begging for approval. You realize you don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to speak with truth. Your authenticity begins to speak for you. Your stance begins to open doors. And most importantly, you begin to feel whole. Of course, not everyone will like this new version of you. Some will feel uncomfortable. They'll say you've changed. They'll try to pull you back into the old role, where you were predictable, quiet, convenient. But you no longer need to live to please. You need to live to be fair to yourself. And being fair to yourself means understanding that, yes, you have every right to. Change your mind. Say no with confidence. Have preferences that no one understands. Like things that seem too simple or too strange. Not know everything. Feel vulnerable. Start over as many times as needed. You have the right to make mistakes and learn, to lose yourself and find your way again, to not follow the crowd, to express your emotions without fearing you'll be seen as weak. Because do you know what's truly strong? Strong is the one who dares to face themselves, to rebuild from the inside, to embrace themselves fully, light and shadow. And the more you know yourself, the more freedom you find. You stop following out of habit. You begin to choose consciously. You start saying, "This represents me," or "This no longer makes sense to me." And when you start living this way, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract people who truly recognize you, not for what you have, not for what you offer, but for who you are. Relationships become more real, work becomes more meaningful, friendships deepen. Silence stops being awkward, it becomes companionship. Because those who live in truth learn to be enough for themselves, and those who are enough for themselves never again accept being only half of who they are. You no longer need to accept less than you deserve. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer need to shrink yourself to fit in. You can and must bloom in your own way, in your own time, in your own color and your own roots. You can finally say, "I see myself, I recognize myself, I respect myself." So often, we live with the feeling that we need to get there. But where is there? The perfect job, the perfect body, the picture-perfect family, a life without mistakes, doubts, or stumbles. This illusion of perfection keeps us from appreciating what really matters: the process, the journey, the steps, the falls that teach us, the new beginnings that shape us, the pain that reveals us. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. And being real means admitting you have fears, insecurities, and bad days. It means understanding that making mistakes is part of life. It means accepting that not everything needs to be ready, resolved, or clear. There are phases where everything seems out of place. There are days when your heart feels tight, your motivation disappears, and life seems to lose meaning. But on those days, more than ever, you need to remember you're alive, and that is already a beginning. You're learning, you're growing, you're freeing yourself from old versions and breaking free hurts, letting go of what was comfortable, even if it was limiting, hurts. But it's a good kind of pain, a pain that announces birth. Because when you allow yourself to be who you are, without filters, without masks, without armor, something inside you blooms. It's not immediate, it's not simple, but it's profoundly transformative. You begin to have more compassion for yourself. You stop being so hard on yourself. You stop comparing yourself. You begin to understand that everyone has their own timing, their own path, their own story. And finally, you stop living in survival mode and begin to live in presence mode. Presence within yourself. Presence in your emotions. Presence in the things that make you feel good. How many times have you stopped doing something you loved for fear of what others would think? How many times have you hidden your true self just to be accepted? How many dreams have you buried for fear of looking ridiculous? But now, think of the opposite. What if you stopped caring about judgment? What if you gave voice to your essence? What if, starting today, you chose to live in a lighter, more honest, more authentic way? People will keep giving their opinions, but you don't need to define yourself by them. You are not what others say. You are what you build inside yourself with truth. Little by little, you'll start to feel stronger. You'll learn to trust your own intuition. You'll realize that you don't need constant validation from others to exist with worth. And most importantly, you'll discover something liberating. You're enough with your story, with your wounds, with your scars, with your choices. You don't need to be more than you already are. You just need to be you. From a very young age, the world tries to shape us. It tells us what is beautiful, what is right, what is desirable. It teaches us what success is, what failure is, what's normal, and what's weird. But have you ever stopped to think? How many of those things do you actually believe? And how many do you just repeat because that's what you were taught? Sometimes we spend decades trying to become what the world values. And in doing so, we slowly drift away from who we truly are. We forget how to listen to our own voice. We forget how to trust our intuition. We forget how to like what we like, to choose freely, to disagree respectfully. And all of that pushes us into a life where we're just a shadow of who we could be. But there is always a turning point. There always is. And it begins with a decision. I don't want to abandon myself anymore. When you make that decision, things begin to align inside you. Not magically, not instantly, but for real. You begin to feel that you don't need to fit in anymore. You just need to belong to yourself. Belonging to yourself is respecting your limits without guilt. It's saying no when something hurts you. It's stopping the forced smiles, the constant agreeing, the endless explaining. It's starting to say, I don't like this. I don't want to go down this path. This environment isn't good for me. That opinion isn't mine. You stop being a hostage to the way others see you, and you become the guardian of your own gaze. And that is liberating. Because suddenly, you realize there is a whole world inside you that has never been explored. A world of sensations, memories, desires, visions. Things that make sense only to you, but that make you feel alive. You start to value the simple things that warm your soul. The smell of fresh coffee, a silent sunset, a piece of writing that deeply touches you, an old song that reminds you of who you once were, a moment of peace in your own company. These things say far more about you than any social media post or someone else's opinion. They are your anchors. They are your refuge. They are your silent truth, the one no one else needs to understand for it to remain real. And little by little, you learn that you don't have to fight the whole world to be who you are. You just have to stop betraying yourself. You don't need to raise flags or justify yourself all the time. You just need to stand firm in your essence. Be at peace with your choices. Walk with serenity, even if it means going against others' expectations. Because the greatest revolution you can live is the one that brings you back inside, back to what is most beautiful, honest, and human within you. Look at your story, every piece of it, what makes you proud and what still hurts. Every step, every choice, every stumble, every sacrifice. You made it this far. You survived long nights, hard days, silent doubts. Words that were never spoken but hurt anyway. Fears no one ever saw. Goodbyes no one knew how deeply they broke you. And still, you kept going. Even broken inside, you went to work. Even in silence, you smiled so no one would worry. Even tired, you said, I'm fine, because you thought that's what people needed to hear. But now you don't have to live like that anymore. Now you can allow yourself to feel. You can allow yourself to be. You can finally breathe lightly and say, enough. Now it's for me. Now I return to myself. And returning to yourself doesn't mean abandoning the world. It means retreating just enough to remember who you are, what you believe in, and what moves you. It means tending to your inner space. It means honoring both your pain and your joy. It means living with awareness. Life doesn't wait. It doesn't pause until you find yourself. It keeps going. but you can choose how you walk it, hiding behind the curtains of existence, or lit up by your own presence. You have the right to take up space. You have the right to speak up with respect. You have the right to say, I no longer accept to live mechanically, emptily, without meaning. You have the right to build a life that looks like you. You have the right to stop pretending. It's time to let go of the versions you created just to survive. Time to silence the voices that told you that you couldn't. Time to break the false identities you wore just to avoid disappointing others. You are not your past. You are not what was done to you. You are not the mistake you made, nor the rejection you suffered. You are what you choose to become from now on. You are what you decide to build, even with the broken pieces that remain. You are the strength that keeps walking, despite everything. You are the light that still shines, even in the dark. And even if no one applauds you, even if no one understands your process, you must keep going, because your life is yours, and no one else is going to live it for you. You can rebuild, you can reinvent yourself, you can love yourself again, you can forgive yourself, you can say, today begins a new chapter, and I choose to walk with lightness, with truth, with courage. And from now on, every time the world tries to convince you that you need to be something else to be worthy, remember this: your value doesn't lie in what others see, but in what you recognize in yourself. And when you recognize yourself, you are set free. So go, even with fear, even with doubts, even with scars, even with everything you are. But go, being you, because there is nothing more beautiful, more powerful, more true than someone who chooses every single day not to abandon themselves. The truth that sets you free lives in who you are. In the end, this journey of self-knowledge is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to your essence. It's about peeling off the layers that pain, fear, expectations, and judgment placed over you, so you can rediscover what God placed inside you from the very beginning: identity. The Bible says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John chapter 8:32. And that truth, from a psychological perspective, begins when you decide to stop living according to the lies you believed about yourself. Lies like, I'm not capable, I don't deserve love, I am a mistake, I have to please everyone to be accepted. These beliefs, internalized since childhood, often reinforced by traumatic experiences, disconnect us from who we truly are. And that disconnection generates suffering, anxiety, low self-esteem, emotional exhaustion. But the truth sets us free. And the truth is, you are loved, you are wanted, you are valuable, you are created with purpose. From a psychological point of view, rediscovering that truth is like reintegrating the fragmented parts of the soul. It's recovering your sense of belonging, not to the world, but to yourself. It's no longer being a stranger in your own body, but feeling at home within. It's recognizing that you don't need to fight to be accepted, because you're already accepted by the one who knows your heart like no one else. The deepest healing begins when you understand that your identity is not in your wounds. It's in what remains after them. And what remains is what God planted in you. Dignity, worth, strength, beauty, courage, and light. You are a work in progress, yes, but you are not alone on this journey. God does not abandon what He began. And psychologically, when you reconnect with your Creator, whether through faith, prayer, contemplation, or silence, you strengthen your emotional foundation. You understand that you don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to have everything figured out to begin. You don't need to fake a strength that is still being formed. You just need to be honest with yourself, with life, with God. This is the truth that heals, that you have value, even while you're still in process, that you no longer need to shape yourself to please others because you were already shaped by the Creator's hands, that you no longer need to chase validation because you've already been sealed with identity. So start today. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, I accept myself, I respect myself, I rediscover myself. Because the most important journey you can ever take is the journey back to who God created you to be. See you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like.